Hey everybody, it's your girl Urban Farm Sister. Everybody, it's your girl Urban Farm Sister. So today we're going to talk about flea beetles. But before we do that, I wanted to go over a concept that I introduced yesterday, which was called the IPM, or the Integrated Pest Management. I don't think I effectively explained what that is, so I'm just going to do this short little intro about it, and then we'll get into talking about flea beetles and how to control them. So the IPM process. The IPM approach uses a basic decision-making process. This process helps determine if treatment is necessary, where to treat, when to treat, and which strategies are the best to use. The steps taken to determine a treatment plan are the same regardless of the environment or the type of pest. IPM follows 6 basic steps listed below. First, you want to identify the insect or pest that you're dealing with. You want to learn about the pests, the whole life cycles, and the biology. Then you want to monitor and sample for pest populations. You want to establish an action threshold, which means you want to establish is treatment even necessary? Can the damage be tolerated? If not, at what level do I need to do a treatment? Then you need to choose your tactic, which we'll talk about in a second, and then you need to evaluate your results to see if your tactic was effective or do you need to use some other means. So there are 6 main methods of IPM. There's host resistance, biological control, cultural control, mechanical control, chemical control, and sanitation control. And we'll go over all 6 of those. So the first one is host resistance. Basically, host resistance is using a pest resistance building material, ornamental plants, etc. to control pests. Basically, you're looking at the plant itself and you're seeing what are its qualities that make it resistant to a particular pest. Some plants have thorns, some plants have, really leathery leaves, things like that. Plants have their own natural way of dealing with pests. So you have to look at the plant itself to see what is the resistance that the plant naturally has, and then you can use that to win the battle of the pest that you may be encountering. So biological controls, you use a natural enemy such as predators, parasites, and pathogens to control pests. Some examples of natural enemies would be lady beetles or ladybugs, praying mantids, spiders, ambush bugs, predatory mites. And some examples of pathogens would be like the Bt bacteria we talked about, as well as fungi and nematodes. All of these are considered biological controls because they use nature to fight nature. Natural controls, what you're doing is you're changing the way you go about farming or gardening. So this can include rotating crops, changing your row width, pruning, thinning, fertilizing, weeding. Basically, you're changing the environment so that you allow for the plant to grow healthy and strong so that it's able to, overcome attacks if it's attacked by a pest. For mechanical controls, what you're going to do is use a mechanical device to prevent a pest access to your plant. So this can include traps, barriers, screens, zappers, anything to that nature. One example of the mechanical control that we talked about yesterday was the insect netting. Chemical controls is the use of pesticides to control pests. You'll want to vary your pesticides to avoid pest resistance. You'll also want to use safer pesticides when you decide to use this method. The chemical control method should be the last resort method because it's the most taxing on the environment. Not only will you risk killing the pest in question, but you may also kill beneficial insects as well as other plants, animals, even humans in the environment with the use of chemicals. All right, so sanitation is very important. What you want to do is you want to eliminate or control food sources, living spaces, water, access, and hiding spots for pests. If you can control these things, this will prevent them from even wanting to show up in the first place. So usually when it comes to pest management, the conventional approach would be just to spray an insecticide to control, say, a caterpillar, which is often results in a secondary outbreak of aphids or spider mites because the beneficial insects such as ladybugs or beetles and other predators are also killed. When you use IPM and you use an organic approach to IPM, what you do is you try to find the most, the least lethal method and the most environmentally friendly method. So in an organic approach, what you would do is you would enhance the habitat for beneficial insects to increase population. You would reduce stress on crop plants. Use adapted varieties. That means use plants that are adapted to living in that particular environment. And you'll use non-chemical methods to control pests. Like, we talked about BT, which is the bacteria. Hand picking, where you actually take the insect off the plant. Roll covers, when we talked about the netting. You can use alternate planting dates. Maybe if you plant it later, once these particular pests that you're trying to control, after they're not active anymore, you can plant your things then. Also using traps, lures, all types of things. The last and final thing that you want to do is actually use that chemical control, because that is the most environmentally taxing one. Well, now we're going to switch gears and we're going to talk about flea beetles. So flea beetles, they can be a big nuisance in on a Brassica plants. What happens is the beetles come in, first it'll be like a few, and then all of a sudden you'll have hundreds of them. And if they get really out of control, you can have thousands of them on your plants. What they do is they actually feed little holes in there. They call them shotgun holes, and they just damage your leaves. Each one of them, they're leaf beetles, so they're beetles. They have chewing mouth parts, and so all they're doing is just chewing holes in your plants. They'll mate on your plants and they'll lay eggs, and their larvae will actually develop down in the soil, and they can actually damage the roots as well. So what you want to do with flea beetles, the first thing you want to do is try to prevent them from even getting on your plants, because once they get on your plants, they can be very hard to contain and very hard to control. So again, you're going to want to use that insect netting, create that bed around the plant or that cage around it, prevents access. Now, if you didn't do that and you're starting to see flea beetles, you're going to have to use a product called diatomaceous earth. So diatomaceous earth is like a powdery, kind of like flour. This particular grade of it, it's this food grade diatomaceous earth. So this is going to make a mess. But what you want to do, if I can get some of this powder off of here. What you're going to do, it looks like flour. And I'll put a link to the diatomaceous earth on here as well. You can get this off Amazon. It's a food grade quality, so you can actually use it for yourself as well as your animals. And I won't get into the specifics about all the benefits that diatomaceous earth are. But know that it is used also to control insects, and it's another non-toxic way of controlling insects. So basically what you want to do is you want to get a sift, and you want to fill the sift up, and then you want to take this and dust it onto the leaf surface of your plants, and try to get it on the underside of the leaves as well. Flea beetles, they usually stay on the top, but once you start putting this diatomaceous earth on there, they might try to move underneath to still feed on the leaves. So you just want to try to get as much as you can on the plant. The plants will actually look white, they'll look like chalky, but that's what you want. You want that dusting on there. Now if it rains, you want to come back in as soon as the rain goes away, and you want to dust it again. You're going to want to keep it dusted for at least about 2 weeks. That's enough time for, if another generation of flea beetles comes up, it'll be there, and it'll deter them from wanting to feed on your plants. So how diatomaceous earth works is that if you look at it under a microscope, it's really sharp and it has jagged edges, and what that does, it creates a hostile environment for the flea beetles, and in all actuality you can actually cut them up and cause them to die, but it also makes it an environment where they don't want to stick around, so they'll just go away and they'll find some other plants to go on to. So hopefully you don't have some other Brassica plant that they'll go to. They're kind of host specific too. They only infest certain plants, so you can look up and see what plants flea beetles infest, and then know that you're gonna have to deal with them. I had an issue with flea beetles on my collards, and using the diatomaceous earth, I was able to control them. I have a video showing you the damage, as well as what it looked like prior to them, infesting my plants, and then after I've used the treatment, my plants were able to recover. Those shotgun the leaves with the shotgun holes in it, I had to remove. They were damaged, they looked nasty, it looked bad, but the plant was able to recover. And then, I had other issues with caterpillars and stuff that came in, so I had to deal with those as well. But just know that you can use diatomaceous earth. It's not a toxic thing for you or your pets. It can be affect other insects as well. So when you're dusting it, make sure you're only keeping it on your Brassica plants, or the plants that you're trying to prevent the flea beetles on, as well as any other insects you're trying to control with it, so that you're not, affecting other things. It can affect bees, so be mindful of that when you're out here dusting. This particular kind of gets caught in the air and can be kind of irritating. You might want to wear a mask and some goggles if you're dusting and it's flying up in the air and it's a windy day. But it's not deadly to people. Now, insects is another story.
Another means of controlling flea beetles is to practice crop rotation. Since they overwinter as adults, you do not want to plant a plant in that same area that is their host plant, because all you will do is increase their populations, and you will prolong their existence on your field or in your yard. So it's very important that you practice crop rotation. So if you grew, say, collard greens in an area, you don't want to grow any other type of Brassica plant in that area. You'll want to rotate out to something that flea beetles do not feed on, so that you can get rid of them. Also, you can go in and till the area, and what that'll do is that'll expose the adults living above ground, and especially in the wintertime, that'll cause them to actually freeze. It'll also expose eggs and any larvae that may be underground as well. So you want to practice crop rotation, but you also want to practice some other form of cultural control, where you're actually, moving the soil or moving plants away that will actually serve as a food source for them.
So this concludes the video about flea beetles. On our next video, we will talk about aphids and how to control them on Brassica plants. If you have any questions about flea beetles, as well as caterpillars or any other insect, you can send me an email at urbanfarmsista@gmail.com. Thanks. Talk with you later. Bye.